Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Erin Yelland and I'm coming to you from Kansas State University. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my tips and tricks for presenting the program called Gray for a Day. And Gray for a Day is a program that is all about the sensory and functional challenges that some older adults might face as a result of their age. This program is very friendly and adaptable and can be presented to a variety of audiences and in a variety of settings. And in fact, in Kansas, we've presented it to lots and lots of folks. In fact, thousands of them we have reached with this program. Notably, we present this in our Introduction to Human Development course each semester with hundreds of students. And we've also presented this through Extension as well, ranging from 4-H participants all the way up to individuals in long-term care facilities, those individuals participating in senior centers. We've also presented this program with LPN students and CNA students and other students who are in medical professions. These types of programs have also been presented with medical professional students as well, such as doctors and pharmacists, those individuals that are in school for those professions. So it's been done with a whole lot of people and in a whole lot of ways. But what I was finding was that there wasn't a single flexible program that could be delivered in all of these variety of settings and could be adapted easily and evaluated across the whole spectrum. So I developed Gray for a Day. We've been presenting this program in Kansas since about 2015, 2016. It's now 2018 and it is still going strong and we're loving it. This program has also been shared at a variety of conferences, including the National Extension Association for Family and Consumer Sciences, and that is where several other states began to pick up this program as well. So I would like to provide this webinar recording for you to just tell you about some updates that I've made to the program, but also give you some tips and tricks for how to present it, run through the program with you briefly, and give you some information for if you have more questions and things like that. So the first thing that I'm going to do today is share my screen and show you the Leader's Guide. So this Leader's Guide and much of the program has been recently updated as of August 2018. This Leader's Guide is going to walk you through how to present the program, who it should be presented to, and what the intended objectives are, and all those good sorts of things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to the Leader's Guide, and hopefully you should be able to see that now. So again, this program was developed by myself at Kansas State University on behalf of K-State Research and Extension. So any and all reiterations of this program, I suppose, should be credited to K-State Research and Extension and myself. So the purpose of this program is to provide a simulation experience that educates individuals on age-related sensory and functional decline that some older adults might face. We are utilizing an empathic approach with this program. So what that means is that we are essentially going to put an individual into someone else's shoes and encourage them to develop empathy towards those individuals. So this empathic approach is what we'll be using. And studies have shown that this is a really positive approach to use in this setting. But there's a really important caveat, and we'll get to that later. But the importance of this program can only be achieved if there's appropriate discussion and adequate discussion that goes along with it. So we're going to talk about that later. But next, going on to the lesson objectives. So of course, we want folks to understand how your senses can decline with age. What many people don't realize is that age-related sensory decline is totally normal. Many, and if not all people, are going to experience it. Some people may notice it terribly, and others may not notice it at all. But these senses and these functions do decline, and it's totally normal. So we're going to talk about that. We also want individuals to experience that age-related sensory and functional decline, hence the sensory experience that they're going to be, and simulation that they're going to be going through when you implement this program. We also want them to understand the influence that these declines can have on your daily life. So through the activities, we're going to have them engage in different activities that you might participate in on a daily basis. So how does having these limitations affect your ability to do things that you would normally be doing otherwise? Then we want them to be encouraged to develop the skills necessary to effectively interact with someone who may be experiencing age-related sensory and functional decline. And we'll talk about this more when I go through the PowerPoint with you, but we really want to build those skills, build that empathic understanding so then they can do something about it. Then we want them to build those skills to support someone. And that's going back to when I said we want them to develop that empathy and build that knowledge and understanding and skills to not only understand what that person's going through, but interact with them in a meaningful and productive way, and then support them, do something about it. How can we actually help them get through these challenges and adapt to these challenges? The last objective of this program is to understand how taking steps to improve or maintain your health now will contribute to your sensory and functional well-being in the future. And this is incredibly important because in order to age well, we need to be making positive health decisions across our entire lifespan. When I present this to our Introduction to Human Development students every fall, spring, and summer, this is one of the things that I really hit home with them, because as 18 to 22-year-olds typically, they may not be making the best health-related decisions in college. And many of them realize that and are fully aware of it, but what they're not thinking about is how those decisions can impact their ability to age well in the future. We also really hit this home with our young 4-H students or 4-Hers who participate in this program as well, because they're young enough to start implementing those healthy behaviors at such an early age that they can have the most beneficial outcomes later. That's not to say that this isn't an important component for our older adults as well. I always say to our older adult audiences that it is never too late to adopt a healthy lifestyle. So regardless of age, profession, interests, any sort of discrepancy, it is so important that we're always talking about ways to incorporate healthy living into your daily life. And as a result of doing so, you can contribute to your overall well-being in the future, improve your health outcomes now, and those sorts of things. So there's 6 main objectives with this program, all of which we have found to be reaching with our dissemination of it thus far. Next, I'll go into program facilitation. So if you've presented this program before, right now it's going to look a little bit different. So before, we started off with a kit version of this program through K-State Research and Extension, and with that we received grant money to compile a whole host of wonderful materials to implement this program. After doing so, we received a lot of interest in presenting this program in other settings, and we realized that the amount of materials and monetary investment that was required to get those materials was a little bit too much. So I really took this program and took it down a notch and said, how can we make this more affordable and easily adaptable to other audiences? So not only was cost a concern, but then we also had the Introduction to Human Development course. Their instructor became interested in this program and wanted to present this program to over 300 students a semester. So that alone was sort of a logistical nightmare that really pushed me to think about how can we simulate the same things but with fewer and less expensive materials. So this program has changed a little bit over the past couple of years, but the objectives have absolutely remained the same. You're just going to see some different materials, suggestions for activities, and those sorts of things. As a result, you can see that this program, as I'm going to be showing you today, can be adapted and made fun for people of all ages, including youth and older adults, skill levels, and professions. This is really a program that can be presented to anyone, and my main argument for that is that we're all going to age, and aging affects everyone. As you've heard me say, this program is incredibly adaptable and flexible and can be presented with a large variety of audiences, ranging from small groups of 4-Hers that may have 5 or 6 kids, all the way up to our college level classroom that has over 300 students in it. It is recommended, though, to have at least one facilitator for every 30 participants. So that was a recommendation that I started when we first began this program, was one facilitator to every 30 participants, and we've held true to that. Having those additional facilitators will really help boost the outcomes of this program, boost the conversation and dialogue, deliberation that you're able to have with participants, and all those sorts of good things that we want to come out from the program. This program can be delivered in an average of 60 minutes. So with our college students that we present with every semester, we average around 50 minutes because that's the time of their class. But you can make it longer. I've also presented this program for an hour and a half and was able to administer more activities and have a bit more dialogue than I would be able to otherwise. So it's best if you can have around 60 minutes to present this program, but again, you can shorten it or lengthen it by adapting some of the activities that you're including in the program. Again, I've already mentioned several of the groups that we've presented this program with, and these are listed here. So 4-H Youth, one example that one of our extension agents did in Kansas was she presented Gray for a Day to her 4-Hers right before they did a senior service project. And they went and visited a long-term care facility, interacted with the residents there, and made a craft with them and did some other engagement. And she was profoundly excited about this program's impacts on her 4-Hers before they went and worked with those seniors in that long-term care facility. She was really astounded at the impact it had and how it changed the kids' behavior once they engaged in that activity with the seniors living in that long-term care facility. You don't have to couple it with some sort of activity. You can really do it on its own, incorporate it as some sort of 4-H project or badge. There's a whole lot of opportunity to use this however you would like. We have also used this in middle school and high school and of course college classrooms. I've presented this program to several conferences that bring along our family and consumer science education teachers from across the state of Kansas, and many of them have picked this up for use in their classroom, and it has been very well received. They've been able to implement the program easily, successfully, and they've had really beneficial outcomes for their students as well. Very easily adaptable to be used in a classroom setting. Again, we've used this with CNA, LPNs, pre-med, and other students in a variety of medical professions. And in fact, there's several journal articles and literature that supports doing this type of activity with those individuals who could be working with older adults in those medical settings in the future. We have also done this with staff of long-term care facilities, home-based services, and hospice organizations. So really, this program is essentially done at one point in time, but it can have more of these policy systems and environmental effects if you do it with the right audiences. So doing it with those CNA, LPN, pre-med, and other students in the medical professions, doing it with employees of long-term care facilities, home-based services, and hospice organizations can help to change the environment of those facilities, of those organizations, and of those educational programs, and make them more aging friendly and open the eyes of those individuals to some challenges that older adults might face. But really, at the end of the day, the possibilities are truly endless for this program, as aging absolutely affects everyone. And I encourage you to go beyond this list and think about who else you can present this program with, and feel free to share who you've presented the program with me, so I can learn from you and what you've done. In order to prepare for the lesson, everything is spelled out for you. All of the materials are provided. The PowerPoint is scripted, so you will know certain points that you should be hitting on and when to do that. So really, your first step is to gain familiarity with the program, the materials that you'll be required to get, and what you're going to be required to do during the program, what types of things you need to be saying, and things like that. So really review the program, and always feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. I am the developer of this program. I'm very proud of it, and I'm very open and willing to take any questions that you have about the program. So please do let me know. My email address is right there. It's just my name, Erin Yelland@ksu.edu. The next step in preparing for your lesson is to think about where you're going to be presenting it. Learn the space, because it's best if the tables can be divided into little stations. You'll see as we go through the program that there's certain activities that you'll be doing. If during those activities, if the students or your participants can move from station to station, that oftentimes works best. We have done this in large lecture halls, and we've sort of designated certain areas of the lecture hall to be an activity station. We've done this in small classrooms where we used the floor as an activity station. We've used the hallway as an activity station. So really learn the space and try to figure out the best way for you and your audience to implement the activities. The last thing that we want when you go to implement an activity with your audience there is a logistical nightmare of who's going where and what and why. So always try to figure that out beforehand. The next thing, of course, we want you to check your materials, make sure that you have enough. Again, we don't want that logistical nightmare of someone not having the materials that they need to fully participate in the program. So make sure that you have your materials. If you've done this program previously, make sure that everything is in good condition, that things haven't gotten yucky, and that everything's good to go. And of course, we want you to print your evaluations. So as you've heard me say, we've done this program with thousands of people already, but we are still actively evaluating it. And we encourage you to pass out those evaluations and have your participants complete them. We have completed an IRB through Kansas State University, and so we are able to collect those evaluations. You'll see next the evaluation procedure. The evaluation templates are a part of this leader's guide, and I'll show those to you in a bit. But at a minimum, we want you to be asking those questions that are on the evaluation template. If you would prefer, you are absolutely more than willing to take off the case, you're more than able to take off the K-State Research and Extension logo and utilize your own school's logo if you would prefer. Or your own organization's logo if you would prefer. We just ask that you return those evaluations to me in some way. You don't have to send me the hard copy. You can keep a copy for yourselves. And in fact, you don't even need to send me the hard copy at all if you want to share your data summary with me. So the options there are that you can scan and email me your evaluations. You can put them in an envelope and snail mail them to me, and my address is here on the leader's guide. Or you can send me a frequency summary of your evaluation findings. So percentages and numbers of who said what and who reported certain things. But please, again, do share those evaluations with me so we can continue to evaluate this program and talk about its impact across the country. The next thing that I'll talk about is the program's materials. So you'll remember me saying that originally we had these big giant kits of materials that were used with this program. We have gone from a big giant kit to a sandwich-sized baggie of materials for each participant. So this is really ideal for implementing this with a wide variety of audiences because you don't need a whole lot of materials. So I'm going to go through these materials with you. Also talk about some of the other things that this program has to offer and where you can find them. So first, of course, you have this leader's guide. There's also a scripted PowerPoint presentation, which I've mentioned before. What I haven't told you is that this PowerPoint is available in both English and in Spanish. So please use this with a whole variety of audiences as you are able to. And then, of course, the evaluation template. All of these materials can be found on my website, which is www.aging.ksu.edu. Once you go to that website, you can click on Programs and Publications, and you'll see Gray for a Day listed. Some other items that you're going to find on the website are also a marketing flyer, which is just a Microsoft Publisher document with the Gray for a Day logo and a sort of inviting little script and a place for you to write when and where your program's taking place and that sort of thing. So feel free to use that. And I've also incorporated an optional activity worksheet. So the optional activity worksheet can be utilized with more of your classroom audiences if you would like to assign it for points or to take attendance. You might also use it to enhance the experience of the simulation if you would like. And what I mean by that is that by requiring them or asking them to complete this worksheet, it's going to allow them to think a little bit more deeply about what they've engaged in, but also give them the opportunity to write with all of the sensory aging gear on. So that is available on the website as well. Feel free to access those materials. They are free for you to use, and I am very willing for you to add your logo to the materials and make it adaptable for yourself. So what the participants are actually going to need and what you're going to be providing for them in this sandwich-sized baggie are 3 cotton balls. I buy the large bags of cotton balls at our local big box retailer, and they're jumbo size. So in fact, if you get the jumbo sized ones, you can even split them in half if you want to take the time to do that, so that you're essentially doubling your number of cotton balls that you've purchased, because they are pretty big. And the cotton balls are going to go into your ears and then one in a nostril. So they don't need to be jumbo sized most of the time. So there is that possibility. So 3 cotton balls. 1 pair of gloves, and of course I recommend that you purchase non-latex disposable gloves, and so that you're not removing someone from the simulation that may have a latex allergy. So make sure that they're non-latex disposable gloves. Alternatively, you can purchase gardening gloves. For example, if you would like to present this program repeatedly, if you know that you're going to be presenting it more than once or every semester, whatever the case may be, you may want to go ahead and invest in gardening gloves. I purchased gardening gloves for this activity from a dollar store and got them for $1 a pair. I ordered them online from their website and was able to order a mass quantity of them. They had them shipped to the store, and then I went and picked them up. So do know that that is an opportunity, or that's you know, another choice for you to give the glove experience. The next thing is to provide masking tape. So I always provide a roll of masking tape for each presentation that I'm doing. And what I will generally do is rip off a portion of it and stick it on the desk or the table where participants are going to be sitting. They'll need around 6 inches. And what they're going to do with that is wrap it around their knuckles to help simulate some arthritis. The next thing that you'll need is a plastic straw. I purchased the bendy straws from our local big box retailer that has the flexible sort of neck on it. And these come around 100 straws for $1. So fairly inexpensive to get. What I like about the bendy straws is that the participants can put them in their mouth and flip it up so that the straw isn't waving around and smacking other people or getting in the way. So I sort of tell them to scuba or snorkel with their straws. The next thing that you'll need are 2 popsicle or craft sticks. We don't want the big wide ones, just the regular size. And these are going to be stuck into the gloves on the palm side of the hand to simulate severe arthritis. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that later on. The next thing are simulation glasses. So you will see in, further down in this leader's guide that there are instructions on how to build simulation glasses for this experience. Those simulation glasses are going to consist of cataracts, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, and macular degeneration. And these are the 4 most common eye diseases that older adults typically have. If you do not want to invest in the simulation glasses, you can do this in an inexpensive way and simulate some similar vision loss. And you can do that with plastic wrap. So if you take a strip of plastic wrap and crinkle it up, you can have participants do one of 2 things. You can have them tie it around their head, it goes over their eyes, or you can instruct your participants to put it over top of eyeglasses if they're already wearing regular eyeglasses, or you can ask them to bring a pair of sunglasses and they can put this over top of their sunglasses. So what we want to see with this plastic wrap is that it's sort of crinkled and that it's covering the lens of glasses, or it's completely covering your eyes. And what this plastic wrap is going to do is simulate a loss in visual acuity, meaning that it's going to make your vision a little bit more blurry. You're not going to be able to see things as clearly as you normally would. So plastic wrap is a good alternative. But if you're going to be presenting this program more than once, I really would recommend getting the simulation glasses. With the simulation glasses, they are basic eye safety protection glasses that I ordered in bulk from some sort of company that must generally sell to construction companies and things like that. So I ordered safety glasses in bulk in yellow and then in clear lenses, and then the instructions on how to manipulate those glasses are further down in this leader's guide. Alternatively, some companies do sell simulation glasses already prepared for you. So if you have dollars to invest in those ready-made glasses, absolutely feel free to do that. They are wonderful. And again, we're wanting to simulate glaucoma, cataracts, macular degeneration, and diabetic retinopathy. So try to look into what your best option is for simulating some loss in vision during this program. The next thing that you'll need are some popcorn kernels. And you might be wondering what popcorn kernels have to do with aging. You'll need around 6 of them. We generally get just a little fingerful and pluck them in the bag. So around 6, there's no predetermined number. But what these are going to do, we're going to have participants put them in their shoes, or if a participant is wearing sandals, you can have them take that masking tape and tape it to the bottom of their foot. What this is going to do is simulate diabetic neuropathy, and we'll talk about that later during the PowerPoint presentation. The last thing that you'll need is a 2-foot piece of yarn. And this yarn, of course, for K-State, I've purchased purple, and it's just regular yarn that you can get at any store. Yarn is nice because it's thicker, and if it gets tangled, you're more likely to be able to get it undone again. At first, when I started using this or doing this program, I used twine, but it was, or very thin twine, but it was much too thin and way too difficult to work with repeatedly. So with this, many of these items you're going to be able to reuse. Of course, you want to throw away the cotton balls. If you get reusable gloves, those gardening gloves, you can of course reuse them. I have also instructed our students when we do this with 300 students that if their gloves are in good condition, they didn't get yucky or wet, that they can put them back in the bag to reuse them. The plastic straw, of course, you need to throw away. You can save the popsicle and craft sticks that they stick into their fingers or into the gloves of their gloves. Of course, you can save the simulation glasses or the plastic wrap. I would not recommend saving the popcorn kernels, and you can save the yarn. So the point is here that some of these materials can be reused, so you do not have to buy them every single time you're going to be doing a simulation activity. I have found, though, that when purchasing all the materials for this, we average around 48 cents per bag of materials, and that includes the cost of the sandwich size baggie. Of course, everything I'm buying is generic and you know, the cheapest option possible that I can find. So really explore your options and see if you can get anything donated, if you maybe have some of these materials already sticking around your house, those sorts of things, to really drive the cost down. Then we have activities that go along with this program. So these are the materials required just to sort of get everyone into the sensory aging experience, but then we're going to have them engage in different activities. For this, I have designed 6 activities that can go along with this program, and they fall into 3 categories. The first of which is daily routines, followed by simple tasks and leisure or social activities. Now, each of these activities will obviously require some extra materials, so I'm going to go ahead and walk you through that. In daily routines, we have 2 activities. The first of which is what should I eat? And I'll walk you through what that activity is in a minute. But for that, you'll need printed nutrition labels. Those are offered here in this leader's guide on pages 9 and 10 for you. The next activity is called Getting Ready for the Day, and this is one of the activities that's going to require some more materials, but hopefully nothing that you would have to go out and purchase. So bring items from home that you use each morning. You can ask friends or family members to donate items that they've run out of and that they would otherwise be throwing away. Or even go to a secondhand store and purchase some of these things for an inexpensive price. But particularly things that are more difficult to do, that may be more difficult to do as you get older. So button-up shirts, items with zippers or laced shoes, neckties, and we've also brought in pantyhose, which is really fun, and have individuals try to put on the pantyhose over their existing clothes and see if they're able to do that. The other thing is empty and clean mouthwash containers, toothpaste, shampoo, bottles, and then also contact lens cases, particularly the ones where you can sort of soak them in that solution overnight. They're pretty small and might be difficult to get off. And then bringing a contact lens solution bottle with that. Any items that you might be using in the morning that can be maybe more challenging to operate if you were to have sensory and functional decline. And then thinking about ponytail holders, hair clips, bobby pins, all those sorts of things, you know, anything that you use to get ready during the day. Think about it and try to see if you have those items around if you're going to implement that activity. The next category is simple tasks. So things that would normally be considered pretty simple for you and I that may not be as simple for an adult with severe sensory decline. So the first one is called Dr. Doctor. And for this, we'll either require a computer, tablet, or a smartphone. And of course, when we do this with younger audiences, they all seem to have smartphones these days. When we do it with most audiences, most everyone has a smartphone. If not everyone does, you may have some people in the audience who do, so you can group them into clusters and work with an individual who does have a smartphone. But the instructions with that is that you're going to have them look up a doctor, the nearest doctor from a very rural location that's going to specialize in neurology, cardiology, oncology, those sorts of things. So very little materials are required for that. The next one is a little bit more complicated, but this is by far my favorite activity in this program, and I think is incredibly beneficial because it's a very real experience. It has been very eye-opening for many people who have delivered this program or who have participated in this program. So this activity is called What's This Pill? And essentially what you're going to have individuals do here is dose out their medications for the week. So you'll need pony beads or any type of bead really to simulate pills, and those pills will need to be in a clean, child-proof medicine bottle. So I'm going to emphasize here the need for these bottles to be clean. I was told by a pharmacist that this is absolutely necessary because even if there's a little bit of residue left from some prescription bottle, we don't want any of that residue getting on someone. So I highly recommend either washing them thoroughly, putting them in the dishwasher, doing something to make sure that those medicine bottles are absolutely clean. Of course, the risk for anything happening is incredibly small, but we just want to make sure that we're being as safe as possible with that. So you can get child-proof medicine bottles, either prescription medicine bottles, or even if you want to just use Advil or Tylenol bottles and things like that, that's non-prescription types of items that you might have around the home. One thing to note is I was able to get many of these donated for use in extension across Kansas. So talk to your local pharmacies, particularly those locally owned pharmacies would be tend to be likely to donate things to this type of activity. Talk around to your friends and families and coworkers and see if anyone has those bottles. But you can purchase medicine bottles in bulk online. So I would, if you do need to purchase them, I would look into purchasing medicine vials online. That's generally what they're called to the sort of pharmacy world. So looking at purchasing medicine vials in bulk online is a very inexpensive option. Then you'll also want to have a small label that you can use to mimic a prescription label to add onto that bottle. It would be absolutely ideal to have that option on there. So what I did in Kansas was created a label template from the label company, has the template online that you can download, and then I just wrote up content on the labels that made it look like a regular prescription bottle. So I used a prescription bottle that I had from my local pharmacy to sort of tell me what I should be putting on that medicine label. And then what's really nice is to be able to provide a weekly pill organizer so that they actually have to snap open the little sections and put the beads inside, put them closed or shut them, and be able to utilize that. Alternatively, if you don't have the funds to purchase those, which by the way, you can purchase them from a dollar store for $1, for $1 a piece, you might be able to get them donated from another agency. But if you don't have that, you can create sort of a table on Microsoft Word and print it out, and then just give them that printed out sheet that's the same size about as a weekly pill organizer, and have them try to put the pills into the box. So if you're not able to actually purchase a weekly pill organizer, just make a template on Microsoft Word, print it out, cut it out, and then have them simply lay the pills onto that template. In the next category, we have leisure or social activities. The first one here is to have participants play Go Fish. I have noticed with our younger generations, they seem to not know what Go Fish is anymore. So I oftentimes let them choose their own game if they are unaware of Go Fish, and they play whatever game they would like to play, and they tend to have more fun with it anyways, without me needing to explain to them the rules of Go Fish. So basically, as long as they're engaging in some sort of card game, that's really what I care about and where we see the impact coming from. The next activity is called Say What, and for this you're going to need jumbo marshmallows. You'll see in my bag here that I have included a jumbo marshmallow. If you choose not to do that activity, that's one less thing that you'll need to be putting in your bag. But I have found that all grocery stores and big box stores in our area regularly sell those jumbo marshmallows, even when it's not bonfire season. So all of these materials should be fairly easy to get and hopefully fairly inexpensive for you. So the program setup, what do you do once you have all of this stuff? So what I always do is set out the participant materials in front of them. And I do this so that I don't have to worry about making sure every person has 3 cotton balls and doing all of that sort of thing while the participants are in the room or while they're coming in the room. Hence why I like to use this plastic baggie. I create the little baggies beforehand, put all of the materials inside, and then each person gets a baggie as they walk in, or you can set them on the table before the participants arrive. But either way, having this prepared in advance saves so much time and stress when you are implementing this program. So set this out for them. And then with the masking tape, I mentioned earlier, I like to rip off about 6 inches of it and hang it off of the table where the participants will be sitting, or you can stand there at the door and sort of pass it out to them as they walk in. When you're implementing the activity stations, if you're going to be able to set up beforehand, I'll just have the activity station materials near the area where the individuals will be participating in the activities. Your program procedure, everything that you're going to need to present this information, such as what you need to say and when you need to say it, is all in the notes section of the PowerPoint. And then the activities are described here in this leader's guide. So I've already sort of spilled the beans about some of the activities with you. But again, there are 6 different activities designed to enhance the experience. It's recommended that you implement at least 3 of these. And of course, it would be ideal if you could implement at least 1 activity from all 3 of those subcategories of activities. But of course, as I mentioned before, you can implement more or less activities depending on the time that you have. I have also been presenting this program before, and I knew that we were running short on time, so I just cut out one of the activities. It's very flexible. This program is very flexible, and you're able to do that. But of course, while you're presenting this program and while you're engaging in those activities, we want you to be talking with participants and not just sort of standing around the room, right? So some of the questions that you might ask participants to get them thinking and get them talking about what they're experiencing are listed here. So how is this making you feel? Are you frustrated, annoyed? Are you just ready to give up? Many people will feel those same things. How might this particular task become more difficult as you age? Why is this more difficult than usual? What are you doing to compensate for your challenges? And if you keep a close eye on your participants, you're going to see them compensating for their challenges in various ways. And it's really sort of interesting to see how they're all doing that. How can you adapt this situation to make it more aging friendly? And what can you do to help an older adult in this situation? Those are just some sample discussion questions that you can utilize during this activity time. Now to go through the 6 activities themselves. I've already mentioned a little bit about these activities when I was describing the materials, but I'll remind you of them and tell you a little bit more about them now. So the first one is called What Should I Eat? And this is really in regards to if you were an older adult who has been diagnosed as a diabetic and maybe doesn't have the resources or the skills to cook for themselves anymore because of these sensory and functional challenges that they may be experiencing. They may be forced to purchase frozen microwavable meals. So the nutrition labels that I've included are actually from a popular brand of frozen single meals. And what we're going to instruct participants to do is look at those nutrition labels and pick out the top 3 meals that they think would be most appropriate for an individual who has diabetes. Now, notice the note on this activity. I have not consulted a dietitian. I have not consulted a doctor. There is no right answer. Instead, the whole purpose of this activity is to give them the experience of what it might be like to purchase an easy to prepare meal with little knowledge or resources about their diet requirements when you have all of the sensory aging gear on. So not all individuals, when they're diagnosed with diabetes, will be given pamphlets and information and access to a registered dietitian or any information from their doctor whatsoever. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So if you had little knowledge or resources about your condition, what would it be like for you to have to choose what meal you could eat that's easy to prepare for yourself? The next activity is getting ready for the day. And of course, I mentioned before, all those fun materials that you can bring from home or get from your friends or family or secondhand stores, and then instruct participants to essentially get ready for the day and use all the materials that you've provided, try to put things on and off and do your hair and all those sorts of things, get them active and engaged with those materials. Doctor is the next activity, and again, this is one of my favorites. But imagine that the instructions say that you live in Scobey, Montana. Scobey, Montana is the county seat of Daniels County, which is considered the most rural county in the continental United States as of the 2010 census. When I've been implementing this program in Kansas, I've picked a rural location in Kansas for them to use. But I think this is more exciting to pick a place that they may not be aware of. So if you're from Montana, you might want to pick something else, or you could use Scobey. It's a very good example of how hard services can be to find for rural individuals, let alone when you have sensory and functional declines. So we asked them to find the closest medical doctors in the following specialties: neurologist, urologist, cardiologist, and oncologist. And unfortunately, these are sort of the 4 most prevalent specialties or specialist doctors that many older adults will end up needing or will end up seeing in their future. So instruct them to locate those physicians using either a smartphone or things like that, tablet, computer. You can choose to have them write down their findings. So on the optional worksheet that is provided with this program, they can write down the doctor's name, telephone number, and city and state. With Scobey, Montana, we ask that they try to keep the doctors within the United States. The next activity is What's This Pill? And of course, this is an activity that requires some more materials and requires a little bit more investment of your time to prepare, but it's really, like I said, one of the most beneficial activities that I like to see participants engage in. So the instructions are pretty simple with this. We just want them to read the dosing instructions on the pill bottle that you've provided for them, and dispense their medications for the week into a weekly pill organizer. Or of course, I said you can print off like a little Microsoft Word template chart that has the different days of the week, AM and PM, and have them dose that out that way. Next is Go Fish, and of course with that we're just going to provide them a deck of cards and ask them to play Go Fish or another preferred card game. The last one is Say What, and this is, again, I have all these favorites, and this is another one of my favorite activities. But with this, we're going to ask a participant to safely stuff a jumbo marshmallow into their mouth. And what this is going to do is simulate speech impairment as a result of a stroke. And this is something that is very real for individuals who have suffered from a stroke or who know someone who has suffered from a stroke. It can provide severe speech impairments, which can ultimately affect so many areas of your life and can really affect your communication, your ability to communicate effectively and clearly. After some technical glitches, I am back online and recording the Gray for a Day webinar. The last thing that I left off telling you about was the evaluation procedure, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the debriefing procedure. You heard me say earlier when I was going through the Leader's Guide about the importance of debriefing with this program. And in fact, the literature and research shows that when participants who do a sensory aging experience are not properly debriefed and there's not adequate conversation that occurs along with the program, some of the program's messages can be lost. And we certainly don't want that to happen with your audiences. So it is absolutely crucial that you are doing appropriate debriefing and having appropriate conversations with your participants so that they can fully understand the purpose of the program and the messages that we're trying to get across. You'll see within the PowerPoint presentation that we have built-in discussion questions at the end. So those discussion questions are really there to help guide you through that debriefing process and to trigger some of the thoughts and ideas and emotions that we would like to see come out of this program. You'll see the last sentence in the debriefing procedure says that these discussions will enhance the effects of the simulation, protect against the enabling of ageism and misunderstandings of the program's purpose, and conclude the experience in an effective and positive way. And we want that to happen for your programs as well. So it is absolutely imperative that you review those discussion questions and that you're prepared to engage in those at the conclusion of your sensory activities. The next section in the Leader's Guide is program adoption. And this Gray for a Day program is free for use from any agency or organization. It is not strictly limited to cooperative extension units across the country. This is really meant to be used by anyone. And I've mentioned before that we have our family consumer science education teachers who are within the school systems across our state involved in this program. We have had long-term care staff present it, or long-term care administrators rather, really present this to their staff. So really this is open and flexible for anyone to use. If you would prefer to remove the K-State branding, you are free to do so. I just ask that you cite the program correctly within the PowerPoint or within your materials so that folks know that it did come from K-State Research and Extension. The citation that we would like you to use is listed here in the Leader's Guide if you would need it. Lastly, any questions that you have about this program can be directed to me. I'm a very open and approachable person, so I hope that any questions that you have, you absolutely feel free to reach out to me. Ask me a question, even if it seems silly to you. I'm very passionate about this program and proud of this program, so I'm absolutely able and willing to help you in any way that I can. The next thing that you will see in the Leader's Guide are the evaluations. And I've already mentioned to you about the evaluation procedure in the Leader's Guide, but here are the actual evaluations ready for you to use. There are two different evaluations, one for youth and one for adults. They are going to be measuring essentially the same thing, the same objectives, but we're just going to ask the questions in a little bit of a different way and give them a different response option. So for youth, you'll see that we use the smiley face sort of ranking scale here for the younger audiences to use and to rank how they felt about participating in the program. At the end, we ask them, what is the most important thing that you learned today about aging? And it has been absolutely amazing, some of the very profound responses we've gotten out of participants as young as 7 years old. I remember seeing some that were very very passionate about what they had experienced. The next evaluation is for adults, and so I generally use this evaluation with high schoolers and on up through the age spectrum. So this will measure all of the objectives that we are attempting to meet, and we then ask them to list the 3 most important things that they learned today. And while the quantitative data or the check marks that we like to see up top are really beneficial, it is always a pleasure to read the responses that many people will write here in this section. That is it for the evaluation. They are all a single page on the front side only. Of course, we ask that if they have any other comments, they're free to use the back of the page. But that's it for the evaluation, and these are IRB approved through Kansas State University, so we are set to go ahead and collect those evaluations across the country. The last couple of pages in the Leader's Guide is instructions on how to make the simulation glasses. And I'm not going to walk through this step by step with you. I will leave you to read it and to decide which is the best method for you to make these glasses. However, these are the methods that we have used, and we have practiced quite a bit with different materials and found that some things work better than others. So I hope that these instructions will work for you as well. But you will be able to see the ultimate goal of what we would like the experience to be through the lenses. So here you can see for cataracts, we want that vision to be blurred and yellowed. And for glaucoma, we want that peripheral vision to be completely lost. So there are example photos on what we want that field of vision to look like, and then instructions on how to make the glasses look that way. As a side note, you can remember that you can purchase these safety glasses in bulk from some online retailers, and I would encourage you to scope that out. If you go to some of the big box stores in your town, you'll find that they sell a single pair of safety glasses for a much higher price than what they sell for them online in bulk. So they're fairly inexpensive online, and I would encourage you to do that. I would also like to make reference and note that there are some companies that do sell these simulation glasses already prepared. So if you have grant funds or if you have funds to support the purchase of those ready-made glasses, I absolutely encourage you to go ahead and do that. The next less expensive option is to purchase the safety glasses and create them yourself. And then the least expensive option is to provide the crinkled up saran wrap to have them put over their eyes or affixed to their glasses or sunglasses. Next, you will see on the Leader's Guide, these are the nutrition label handouts that you will need if you participate in the What Should I Eat activity. So these are from a popular brand of a single serving frozen meal, and we received or found these nutrition labels from their website. We were able to sort of copy and paste them into this document. So here are the nutrition labels. It's one page front and back of nutrition labels for you there. All right, so that is it for the Leader's Guide, and I hope that it is helpful and informative for you and really answers the questions that you might have and is able to walk you through the process of presenting this program. The next thing that I would like to share with you is a couple of other resources that I have developed to go along with and support the Gray for a Day program. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here again. And first I will share the optional worksheet. So this is the Gray for a Day Activity Station worksheet, and this is a tool that you can use if you would like to either give your participants the opportunity to write down their thoughts and have the opportunity to engage in this worksheet, or if you're a teacher or if you're doing this in a classroom setting, if you would like for students to turn this in as either a marker of attendance or if you would like them to turn it in for a grade, this is an opportunity for you to do so. So looking at this optional worksheet, remember that we have 6 total activities that have been designed for this program, and all 6 of them are listed here. So if you were to be presenting this program for quite a lengthy amount of time and you wanted everyone to engage in all 6 activities, you could simply print off this worksheet in its entirety. But most of you will not be, and will be only presenting selected activities with your program. So the way that you can easily manipulate this document and get rid of the activities you won't be participating in is simply by clicking on the columns of the activity that you won't be presenting on, and highlight them and simply press your backspace button, and that will completely delete it. So you can feel free to delete the activities that you will not be engaging in from this, and then move up any activities that you'll be engaging in up to that top sheet, so it's all on a single piece of paper. So that is the optional worksheet, and I hope that that is useful for you. The next thing that I will share on my screen is our Gray for a Day promotional flyer. And this is just a very simple flyer that I created using the Gray for a Day logo to help recruit participants. So this might be good to hang up in a library or a coffee shop, or around a university, or around classrooms, wherever it might be, to help and recruit people to come to the Gray for a Day program. You can feel free to edit this however you need to make it suitable for you. Again, you can remove the K-State branding, insert your own sort of information, but I just want to have a template available for people to use to advertise the program should they need it. So that is available for you also on the K-State Aging website. The next thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and walk through the Gray for a Day PowerPoint with you. And I'll go ahead and show you that the PowerPoint does have leader's notes and with all of the slides. So you should be able to hopefully quite easily be able to take this program and adopt it for your use. You'll be able to see the types of things that I normally say when I'm presenting the program. So that is there for you to use. So feel free to use those leader's notes. That's really what they're there for. But next I'm going to go into full screen mode here to share with you the Gray for a Day PowerPoint. So this is the beginning slide, and this is where, of course, I take the opportunity to introduce myself and give a little bit of information about what we'll be doing today with the sensory aging activity. Welcome everyone, and maybe if you wanted to do an introductory icebreaker activity, this would be a perfect place to do that, to get people up and moving and engaged. The next thing that you'll see that we'll do through this presentation is really provide a foundational understanding of sensory and functional decline that is associated with age. So the first thing that we'll do, and it might seem rather simple, is go over the 5 senses. So for younger audiences, maybe they might have a little bit of trouble remembering all 5. For our older audiences, this is more of just a refresher of what the 5 senses are, and really will lead us into the conversation about how all 5 of our senses can be affected by age-related decline. So just go over the 5 senses. And then I have a little pop-up that says that age-related sensory decline is normal. So you'll notice through this PowerPoint slide, especially in these first few slides here, that I have them what I call clickable, meaning that not all of the information shows up on the slide at once. You can feel free to edit that on the PowerPoint presentation if you would like, but I like to do this so that I can sort of quiz people as we go on. So of course, first I'll ask, okay, so who can remember what your 5 senses are? And people will rattle them off, and then I show the picture here of our 5 senses, that graphic. And then I'll start to talk about, but we're here today to talk about age-related sensory and functional decline and start to experience what that might be like for an older individual. How many of you think that age-related sensory decline is totally normal and have them raise their hands? Have a little bit of conversation about it, and afterwards you're able to pop up that description there that age-related sensory decline is normal. The next thing I'll ask people is, at what age do you think your senses begin to decline? And in my experience, a lot of people will say 70s, 80s, but in reality, your senses start to decline in your mid-50s generally. And we'll see that our 5 senses can actually decline at different rates, and they can start their general decline at different ages. So my next thing is to ask people, so what sense do you think starts to decline first? And most people are going to guess vision, but in fact, the answer is hearing. And your hearing actually begins to decline in your mid-40s, is the general age at which your hearing begins to decline. The next one, of course, is vision. So vision is always one of the top ones that people guess, but hearing actually starts to go first, followed by vision, touch, taste, and smell. So all 5 of your senses do decline with age, but one thing that we'll discuss a little bit now and further on throughout the program is that not all of our senses are going to decline to the severity that participants will experience it today. So that's very important to note. Not everyone is going to have hearing loss to the point where they actually notice something is different, and some people will. One thing that I love to do with this program is pull in personal stories and experiences and things that I've heard or seen. I think that makes this program incredibly powerful. And actually, when I've been doing that with audiences and share what I've experienced personally or in my family, I've noticed that the participants become more engaged and they start to share their own stories. And this becomes a lot more real for them. So a personal story here with hearing, many people think that it's only, older adults, maybe in their 70s, 80s, that need hearing aids. But in fact, my mother is currently 57 years old and has had hearing aids for a couple of years now. So her Okay, another technical glitch there, but we're back. So the story I wanted to share with you is that my mother, who is now 57 years old, has had hearing aids for a couple of years. And unfortunately, her hearing loss was affecting her ability to communicate with the family and even perform at her job. So she, in an administrative position, was being asked questions by the big boss at the end of the table, and she never even heard him. And that was the point at which sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, where she went and got those hearing aids, and her quality of life and her ability to communicate with others has significantly improved since then. And it was really amazing to me to watch her excitement when she realized how much she had actually been missing without her hearing aids and the noises that she didn't even know existed simply because she couldn't hear them. So again, it's very beneficial to pull in your own stories. Many people are surprised that my 57-year-old mother has hearing aids and has hearing aids in both ears. And so what sort of stories do you have that you can share about age-related sensory decline to share with your participants? The next slide then goes into a little bit more detail and a little bit more depth about each sensory decline. So the first one is hearing. And so with that, we talk about individuals' ability to effectively communicate, and a similar story to what my mother was experiencing. So 50% of all older adults experience hearing loss that affects their communication and relationships with others. So again, again, pull in those personal stories. Ask them how their family member or their loved one's declining ability to hear things as clearly and as loudly as before has impacted their relationships and their ability to communicate. There's oftentimes a lot of robust discussion that can come out of that. Next, of course, is vision, and we're all aware, I'm sure, that older adults are more likely to have vision loss compared to individuals who are younger. And in fact, not only do older adults experience more vision loss, but they also experience a greater number of eye diseases, or they have a greater prevalence of eye diseases and disorders. And the four most common eye diseases are cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic retinopathy. It is at this point where many people really start to get hooked into the program, especially younger individuals, I've noticed, because they'll say, oh my gosh, that's what my grandma has, or oh, I remember that's what my dad has, and he complains about it and has to wear these funny glasses. I've often noticed that these particular terms sort of make people more aware of what we're going to be talking about today and gives them a little bit more of a story to be able to pull in to the experience that they're going to have. Next is touch, taste, and touch, smell, and taste. And this is what I like to call the warning slide, because many of the things that we'll talk about in this slide go back to those warning touches, smells, and tastes, and things that could potentially harm us if our sensory decline is severe enough. So with our ability to touch, our sense of touch decreases, which can make detection of temperature, vibration, pressure, and pain more difficult. So one of the stories that I'll share with this is an older adult who perhaps puts their hand under incredibly hot tap water. Their decline in the nerve endings in their fingers and in their hands, coupled with decreased reflexes and reaction time, can make them more susceptible to becoming burned from that water. It is at this point where you can talk about the need to make sure that our hot water tanks are set on the appropriate temperature in our house to make sure that we're living in that safe environment that we want to be living in. Another instance where a decrease in your sense of touch can become an issue is if an older adult perhaps experiences a cut or a laceration or some sort of injury to either the hands, but particularly the feet, because you generally can't see them as well, and you may not be able to feel what's going on. And we know that for individuals who are diabetic, they can have significant complications from untreated wounds. And so we've seen this happen in many older adults who get lacerations on the foot, which then become infected, and all of that process is significantly worsened by their diabetes. So it's really interesting the impact that our sense of touch can have on our overall well-being as we age. Next is your ability to smell, your sensory experience. And what I found particularly fascinating is that humans can smell over 10,000 different scents. And so this is just a really fascinating little tidbit of information, but really helps us think about, wow, that's a lot that we can smell. And as our ability to smell declines with age, perhaps, what are we not going to be able to smell that could potentially harm us or may not make life as enjoyable as what it once was? So this can be a safety issue. And one of the things that I always do here is ask the audience why. Why is this a safety issue if your sense of smell is declining? And people will always immediately say you may not be able to smell smoke and gas. So remember when I said this is the warning slide? These are those warning scents that we want to be sure that people are able to smell so that they can get out of an unsafe situation. Something else that some participants will bring up, but if not, I often do, is the ability to smell food that has spoiled or milk that has turned, for example, you may not be able to visibly see any mold or any growth or any yuckiness on a food product, but perhaps you would be able to smell it. That decline in your sense of smell may be inhibiting that little safety check for you with your foods. The last sense that we'll talk about, of course, is your sense of taste. And with this, I will go ahead and immediately link this back to the conversation with our sense of smell. So we may not be able to smell foods that have spoiled. With the decline in our sense of taste, we may not be able to taste foods that have spoiled. So if you're not able to smell that it smells a little funky, you're not able to taste that the milk is a little sour or something's off, you could ingest something that could give you some tummy troubles later on. So there's some risk there of not being able to taste properly. But what is more sort of profound with this area is individuals' ability to taste sweet and salty things decline before the ability to taste sour and bitter. So unfortunately, it's those really good tastes that we all love, sweet and salty, that go first. And as a result, people may begin making poorer nutritional choices and decisions than what they had previously made before. Some key examples with this. Food isn't going to taste the same. The number of taste buds that you have in your mouth drastically declines with age. So food simply isn't going to taste the same as what it once did. Foods such as salads or vegetables or fruits, for example, could end up tasting like cardboard to someone, and that would make it very unappetizing and something that individual doesn't want to eat. Whereas instead, maybe a processed food tastes more appetizing to them. So it's these types of concerns that we want individuals to be aware of. Many times I'm asked, is this why older people don't eat as well, or why they're not excited about eating, or they just don't seem hungry? And in many cases, this can be a contributing factor to that because food just simply doesn't taste like it used to. Again, with sweet and salty, those are the senses or our tastes that decline first. As a result, we again may make some poor nutritional choices by adding more salt and sugar to items that we normally would not have otherwise, and thus increasing our intake of those items, which is something that we know we need to be not doing. So for instance, if you're having a piece of chicken for dinner, you normally would sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper on it. An older adult may not be able to taste that salt at all. So you might see them reaching for the salt shaker a little bit more often to try and get that salty flavor or to enhance the flavors of the chicken. So watch the amount of salt that older adults can be using in your family, or talking about salt use with our participants, because of course we know that increased salt can lead to higher blood pressure and other adverse health outcomes. The same thing can be said for sugar. So a prime example with sugar is my grandmother. Every single morning she has a bowl of her favorite cereal, and on top of it she places a giant heaping tablespoonful of sugar, pure white sugar straight from the bag, on her cereal, which is just so devastating to me because we know that that's not a healthy choice, but she says that otherwise it just doesn't taste good, and she likes the little bit of a sweet kick that she gets from her giant heaping tablespoonful of sugar. But because she's not able to taste that sugar that's naturally there in the cereal already, she thinks that she needs to be adding that extra sugar in order to enjoy it. So we can see that why this decline in our sense of taste can have some adverse outcomes on our overall health. And we need to be thinking about other options for making our food more flavorful besides adding excess salt and sugar, such as the use of herbs and spices, maybe lemon juice, lime juice, and those sorts of things. The next thing that we'll go into is functional decline. So one of the things that I've noticed about these sensory types of programs is that many of them focus solely on the senses, and this program is a little bit different in that we also talk a little bit about functional decline, and we experience that to some degree as well. So the first functional decline that we'll talk about is arthritis, which of course is a big one. So I always ask, how many of you in this room have arthritis or know somebody with arthritis? And the hands always go up. Arthritis is a very prevalent condition. And in fact, the statistics are there on your screen and show you that 54 million adults in the United States currently have arthritis, and this number is expected to grow to 78 million by the year 2040. Arthritis is a very debilitating condition for many people. And for others, it might be a little aches and pains in the joints that comes and goes. But for other people, they may not be able to function with their severe arthritis. But that's something that significantly affects our ability to be mobile and to enjoy being mobile. When your body hurts, it's not going to be a whole lot of fun. So thinking about how arthritis can affect one's quality of life and their overall ability to function as well as they used to can be very powerful. Next is mobility. Mobility is the most common disability among older Americans, and mobility is really your ability to get from place to place and to be able to get yourself up and moving on your own. So with this program, we don't explicitly have any instructions on how to simulate mobility loss, but if you have the access to the materials and resources needed to do so, I strongly encourage you to implement that into the program. So for example, if you have access to walkers, wheelchairs, canes, any sort of boots or knee apparatuses that sort of keep your limbs still and stiff and really inhibit your ability to move like you normally would, providing that experience could be really wonderful for individuals. When I was in college, we did that, and we had the opportunity to use wheelchairs and walkers and boots and all those sorts of things to go and walk around campus and try to navigate crossing the street and navigate around our campus hospital. So if you have the materials to be able to do that sort of activity, I strongly encourage you to do so. Otherwise, it is absolutely important that we just mention it so that we remember that in addition to the sensory and functional declines that we've already discussed, remember that many older adults may not be able to move and get around as well as they once did. The last functional decline that we will address in the Gray for a Day program is shortness of breath. And this is one that many people do not realize, but once you start talking about it and asking others about it, you'll hear about it quite frequently. Many older adults can experience shortness of breath either for short periods of time or even chronically and have chronic shortness of breath. And a main reason why this is so important is because it can affect our overall quality of life. If you're pretty consistently short of breath, or if you become short of breath when you're exercising, you're going to be less likely to exercise and maintain that healthy lifestyle or achieve the healthy lifestyle that you want to get. Another thing is just thinking about your shopping habits or getting around from place to place, town to town, going into the doctor's office, or even getting your milk. So my example that I always use here is with my grandmother again, and in her town she has a big box store where most people do some of their grocery shopping. And the milk is located in the far back left-hand corner of that big box store. My grandmother could not easily walk to the back of that store, so she is less likely to purchase milk unless she's really feeling like she's having a good day, or she can have a friend go in and get it for her or something like that. So it's really important to think about how this shortness of breath can not only affect your quality of life, your ability to maintain overall health and wellness, but also your ability just to get out and about and to be able to perform those tasks that you and I might perform with very little struggle. So that's it for the functional decline and really the overall overview of the Gray for Day program. So you've seen that so far we've just given people that foundational understanding of sensory and functional decline and some of the things that they're going to be experiencing today. At this point, we are going to have them put that sensory gear on. So up until that point, we want people fully engaged and listening to the conversation and not fiddling around with their materials quite yet. So at this point is when we want people to get gray. And we're going to have individuals get gray in order of decline that I mentioned on the first slide. So the first sensory decline to just start going is, of course, your hearing. So the first thing that we'll have folks do is put a cotton ball into each ear. When I do purchase my cotton balls, I get the giant jumbo bag from our big box store, and they are jumbo cotton balls. So you may be able to split those cotton balls in half and get twice the bang for your buck with your cotton balls, because you generally don't need a whole jumbo cotton ball to go in each ear. The next sense to decline is your vision. And so in order to simulate that, we will have participants either take their plastic wrap, if that's what you're going to be doing, and tie it around their head, or they can affix it to either their reading glasses that they have on already or their sunglasses. So oftentimes if we're going to be doing this, and I know we're going to be doing it with saran wrap and we're going to have contact with the participants ahead of time, I will ask them to try and remember to bring along a pair of sunglasses, and that they can then put that saran wrap onto that plastic wrap. Or at this point you want them to have the simulation glasses on. Next, we'll have them put a cotton ball up one nostril. And so this is going to affect their sense of smell and also taste. And it also helps to exhibit a little bit of that shortness of breath that we talked about earlier. Then we'll have folks tape several fingers at the knuckle. And this is going to simulate some mild to moderate arthritis and make your fingers a little bit more difficult to bend. So we won't tape fingers together. You will only tape a single finger at the knuckle at a time, but have them try to tape multiple knuckles if possible. Then you'll have them put on a pair of gloves, and that will of course help to simulate that loss in your sense of touch, or the decline in your sense of touch. Then on the palm side of your hand, we will have them insert popsicle sticks or craft sticks into the glove. And what this is going to do is make their index fingers unable to bend. So we don't want those index fingers to be able to bend. If you put the popsicle stick on top of the finger, you'll still be able to bend those fingers a bit. We really want it on the palm side of the hand so that they absolutely cannot bend those fingers. And that is going to simulate severe arthritis. And I always share a story at this point. When I was in college, I did a lot of observations at nursing homes and long-term care facilities, and I actually observed a woman who had such severe arthritis to the point where she could not pick up a glass and hold a glass like you and I normally would. So instead of holding a glass with a curved hand and drinking it like this, she had to pick her glass up with both hands, fingers outstretched, and drink her cup this way, because she was no longer able to bend those fingers due to severe arthritis. The next thing that we'll have participants do is take a few popcorn kernels and slip them into their shoe. Alternatively, if a participant is wearing sandals, you can have them take some of the masking tape that you've given them previously and tape those popcorn kernels to their foot. And what this is going to simulate is diabetic neuropathy. And many of you may have heard this before, but it is a common sort of side effect of diabetes. And in fact, my grandpa has diabetic neuropathy. anxiety. Thankfully, there is medication that folks can take to help treat that, but if they do not take the medication, they can have very severe symptoms. My grandpa says that when he forgets to take his medication and before he got on his current medication, it felt like he was walking on knives. And so the safest alternative to walking on knives is walking on those popcorn kernels, because they can be a little painful when you're walking on them. So we really want to give people that experience of what that might be like as a side effect of diabetes. Then the final thing is to put the straw in your mouth and breathe through it. And of course, this is going to simulate some shortness of breath. But I always provide the caveat here for everyone's safety that if you have asthma or COPD or any other breathing or lung disorder, please do not use the straw and prohibit your breathing that way. Also, if you have asthma or allergies in particular, if it's that time of year and you have a cold or something, please let people know that this is not a requirement. And if they do become lightheaded or dizzy or feel uncomfortable, to please stop breathing through that straw. So of course, provide that caveat. Then everyone is officially all gray and they have all of the sensory gear on. So the next thing that we'll have them do is a fun introductory activity with a partner. So what this does is really gets the whole room active and engaged in the sensory experience, and it's a whole lot of fun. So what we say to the participants is what's on the screen. So great news, your grandson is here to visit, but uh-oh, he can't tie his shoe. Then I provide the caveat that you have a 3-year-old grandson, and how many 3-year-old grandkids do you know that hold still? And not very many of them do, especially mine, it seems. So what we're going to have participants do is take the yarn that you've provided for them with their materials and have them attempt to tie it around their partner's wrist. So whoever's sitting next to them, behind them, someone near them, have them try to tie that yarn around their wrist. But of course, we have to remember the caveat that how many of you know a 3-year-old that sits still when grandma's trying to tie his shoe? Not very many. So I make it a little bit more fun and tell them to be an annoying 3-year-old and wave their hand around and do circles and try to leave and do those sorts of fun things. And it really makes it a lot more challenging, but also, and most importantly, a lot more fun and gets people active and engaged in the program. After we do that introductory activity, you can use that time to talk about how did that feel? Was it frustrating? Were you ready to just throw those shoes away and go buy some Velcro? How did that feel for you? And how might that be a real significant challenge for an older adult who is either raising their grandchild on their own, if the parents are not present, or if they regularly visit the child or babysit the child? How might this actually go on a daily basis? And how might that make you feel if you're not able to tie your grandson's shoe? Next, we'll go into the activity stations, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because you heard me earlier going through the Leader's Guide talking about the different activities. I would recommend that you set the room up appropriately and that you have folks go to different stations, have them get up and moving, so when you switch a station that they actually have to get up and move to the next one. Makes the program a little more up and moving rather than constantly seated. But if you do have to keep them in the same place the entire time, that is absolutely fine. Your participants are still going to be engaged in the activities. I generally allow anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes per activity, depending on the amount of time that I have to do the program totally. And normally I do 3 activities per program. But again, that is completely up to you and the amount of time that you have and who your audience is. So this is the point at which you will do the activity stations. After the activity stations are complete, you can have folks go ahead and take their sensory gear off while they're getting back to their seats and before we begin to debrief. The next section is that debriefing section, and I really like people to be engaged and not worrying about their glasses falling off or the cotton ball in their nose getting yucky. I really want them to be free and clear of all of that sensory gear and ready to engage in conversation about what they've experienced. So we have scripted questions for the discussion questions and debriefing process at the end of the activity stations. And this is the first one. And this is really one of the most important questions that we'll ask the participants. And that is, do all older adults experience these types of decline? And the flat out answer is no, they don't. So what we don't want to happen is for people to come away from this activity with a fear of aging or thinking that older people are incapable of doing certain things. We want them to realize that we experienced this loss in sensory decline to a very heightened approach today, to a very heightened level, but this isn't always the case. Many people will have age-related sensory decline and never even realize that their functioning level has changed because either they adapt to it or because the change is so small that they don't even realize it's happened. So this doesn't happen to everyone, especially to the magnitude that folks have experienced it today through their program. So really open up some conversation about that at that point and realize that, we don't want to purport ageist attitudes or make people think that aging is a real drag because aging can be really fun and has a lot of opportunity. The next question is, how would your daily life be different if you had to live with the sensory and functional decline that you experience today? So we go from, okay, now let's take a breath and realize that not everyone has these types of decline to the severity that we experienced them. But now let's go a step further and think about, so what would this be like if you did have these types of decline? How would your life change? How would you feel? There's a whole lot of questions you can ask here. And in my experience, people really start to open up about what they've experienced and how their daily life would be different. With our college students, many of them have said, I don't think I'd be able to be in college. I don't think I'd be able to get around and engage in the social activities that I normally do. I certainly wouldn't be able to perform very well in my classroom with this type of decline. And many of our older adults might say the same thing about their workplace as well, or those working aged individuals. So open up the conversation about what it would be like if you lived your life like that every day. Then we take it another step and say, so how can you better interact with an individual who is experiencing that age-related sensory and functional decline? So we know how it makes us feel. We've just talked about how it could make us feel if we had to live like that every day. So now let's think about how we can better interact with an individual who is experiencing this type of decline. One of the first things that always comes up is talking up or talking a bit louder to older adults. Now, this is a wonderful way that we can better interact with many older adults who might be experiencing hearing decline. But there is a huge caveat with this, and a very personal one for me. This is one of my personal pet peeves, is that there's a difference between speaking up and speaking more loudly than yelling at people and getting in people's faces. So oftentimes when I'm presenting this program, I will actually do a little bit of that role play and say, okay, so there's this difference between speaking up and speaking more loudly and sort of, heighten the volume of my voice. And then I'll go and say, and then getting in someone's face and screaming at them and having that really negative body language. So even when we are speaking up and trying to speak at a louder volume so individuals can hear us more clearly, we need to be incredibly cognizant of our body language and make sure that we're not leaning forward, engaging in any sort of threatening manner, because that can be very harmful to any individual who's being talked to like that. So we want to avoid that. Many people at that point will share their own stories about how they've seen older adults in their own family or in their community get talked to like they're something lesser than what they are, with that very negative body language, with someone essentially screaming at them. So that's a really good way to talk about appropriate ways to adjust the way that you normally do things to make them more aging friendly. There are various other examples that oftentimes come up with this question, and there's a lot of little tools and tricks and maybe adaptive technologies that can come up into this conversation. So please, use whatever specialty you have or experience you have to help really help this conversation flourish. This is the last discussion question. So we've gone from, okay, not everyone is going to have this to the severity that we experienced it today, to, okay, how did that really make us feel? It was pretty challenging at times, and how would that affect my daily life? To how could we better interact with people, and how can we better assist or work with people who are engaging or who have this type of decline? So I would mention that if you are doing this program with a specific audience, you might want to adjust that last question and say, how can I better work with the older adults in my care facility? Or how can I better talk with the older adults that we're going to be visiting tomorrow as a part of our 4-H project? Feel free to do that as long as that question is still getting at that same concept of what can we do differently to make their quality of life better. The next question is all about you, and this is really when we get into the health and wellness aspect of age-related sensory and functional decline. And the question reads, what can you do now to potentially reduce the magnitude of age-related sensory and functional decline? So many people stop and think about this one for a while because they're not sure, but then they come up with some very solid answers, like I need to be taking care of my body and eating healthy foods, and when I ride my bike, I need to make sure I use my helmet, and those sorts of things. So this is really when you can pull in those health and safety behaviors that we should all be practicing across our lifespan to protect ourselves. So wearing eye protection when you're mowing the grass or trimming, wearing hearing protection if you're working with loud machinery, maybe if you're going to a loud concert, if you're going to fireworks, for example. Really protecting yourself is very important. And the last thing that pops up on this slide is that most damage done to the senses is caused by environmental factors. It is caused by the decisions that we are consistently making across our lifespan. One thing that I always mention with our college students is that even though they think they are completely invincible, 18 to 22-year-olds for the most part, the choices that they're making now are going to affect their ability to age well in the future. So if they're not using proper safety equipment, if they perhaps get a head injury or an injury to the face that can affect their hearing or their vision, or anything like that, obviously that can affect their ability to age well in the future and age optimally and successfully. Another personal example that I will often pull in with this question is a story about my mother. And my mother is a person who has never worn sunglasses in her entire life. I've never seen her with sunglasses on. She doesn't own a pair, just has never worn them. And I will argue now that sunglasses, and you can see this in the medical literature, are more than just a fashion statement or a good look. They actually protect your eyes. And my mother is now experiencing the effects of not utilizing proper eye protection. She went to the eye doctor around a year ago, and they found a spot of cancer in the back of her eye. The first thing that the optometrist asked her was, do you wear sunglasses? And she said, no, I never have. And the optometrist said, well, this spot that she now has is most likely a result of not wearing proper eye protection and wearing the sunglasses. So there's numerous things that we can do to take care of ourselves across our lifespan that can really help protect our bodies and preserve our bodies to work the best that they possibly can as we get older. The next slide, of course, is just a reminder to thank your audience for coming and for participating in the program, and of course to remind them to participate in the evaluation process. Of course, filling out an evaluation is completely voluntary, and all of those responses are confidential. We don't collect any personally identifying information, so nothing to be concerned about there. And remember that the evaluation is IRB approved by Kansas State University. So that is the last of the PowerPoint. And I hope again that you remember that there are those PowerPoint notes for you that will help walk you through that program and guide you through the things that we need to be talking about and discussing with this program. And that's really the program for you. I have gone through the leader's guide and shown you the activity worksheet and the promotional poster, and have gone through the PowerPoint as well. We've talked about the activities. So with that, I would like to just remind you, if you have any questions at all, never hesitate to contact me. I am Erin Yelland at Kansas State University. My email address is just my name, ErinYelland@ksu.edu. You can feel free to send a message to me anytime, even with a question that you may think is silly. I'm happy to answer it. And we are very thrilled that this program is being presented in multiple states across the country, and I wish you all the success with it and encourage you to use it with a whole variety of audiences, and then let me know how it's going. I want to hear back from you and know that the program's going well. If you have any questions, concerns, or ideas, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for your interest in Gray for a Day, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.